Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:09 p.m. Central. You're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. We got Jay McNicholas here with us. Jay.
How's it going, Jeff?
It's going, sort of.
Yeah, sort
and
of.
then we got Mark Eddy, who used to co-host with me a million years ago. And remember some of our craziest shows, which we don't have to talk about those. But he's got an
Glad to be back.
T-shirt. I didn't even know there was an iCar t-shirt, but that's cool. But it's great to have Mark Eddy here, and he helps us with a lot of these shows lately. It's been a crazy year of just stressful and financial cuts and crap at my job and just psychosis. So Mark has helped me be lazy and helped me schedule. So that's been amazing.
I'm glad to work with
Mark.
UPRN again.
Yes, definitely. It's helped a great load, and every guest has been unique and a great guest. We got Gary Lynn Clevenger here tonight. Did I say Clevenger right? Am I saying it right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I'm from Georgia, so I got to be careful. I mess up the name. But let me plug these things real quick, and we'll get started. I usually don't plug anything, not in a while, but I just got some books from Blackstone Publishing. Now, they put out a Weird Tales anthology that's all this old stuff from, Weird Tales magazine not too long ago that's really cool. And then they've, let's see, their book is blackstonepublishing.com. And let's see, Nether Station by Kevin J. Anderson. It's like a book in space, and it's part of their Weird Tales new books coming out. So if anybody remembers Weird Tales from a long time ago, this is a book of fiction that apparently has the Weird Tales banner. It's called Nether Station, like Nether Region. I don't know if Nether Region, Nether World. And here's another Nether Region. Here's another one, Good Dogs by Brian Asman, A-S-M-A-N. That's a werewolf book, like some werewolf situations. And then Cadwell Turnbull put out a new book called We Are the Crisis, and the other book is No Gods, No Monsters, and it's fiction with a lot of monsters and stuff in it. So check out Blackstone Publishing, and they really have some good stuff, especially that Weird Tales stuff. And also I tried to nab Neil deGrasse Tyson has a new book coming out, Merlin's Tour of the Universe, and I guess he tries to embody Merlin, which that could be weird, but I'll read it, I guess. And Merlin walks you through questions about the universe. And there's like a little wizard on the cover and stuff. I don't have the book yet, but that's coming out. Blackstone Publishing. And then the last few things is Mr. Ricardo Delgado, which is a comic book artist. He put out a while back a book called Dracula of Transylvania. It's kind of like a book that kind of immerses you with Vlad the Impaler and I guess the fictionized versions of Dracula, but it has like cool comic art. That's on Amazon and by Clover Press. And then this month, that book came out in December 2023, but at September 24th, 2024, this month, he's putting out Dracula of Transylvania tarot card set. So that's looks really cool. A lot of cool art and illustrations. And he wrote the book and a lot of stuff about Dracula. We're actually trying to get him on because, I'm always good for a good Vlad the Impaler show. Those are hard to find. I've had like one, I think. Well, two actually. Michelle Desrochers and Victor Foya. So we'll be talking about Dracula hopefully sometime. November maybe. I've already filled up my October dates. But that's cloverpress.us, cloverpress.us, and look on there. There's a lot of X-Men and crazy comic kind of stuff. It looks really cool. But let's get started. Great to have you all here. And let's see, there's weird stuff popping up on StreamYard. And Gary's here with us, and Jay and Mark, and we got a crazy roundtable going on the Ramones, 1959 Renaissance, Buddy Holly, and Rod Serling. How do we start, Gary, with all this? It's a lot. Where do we start? What's your origin story?
Well, actually, I guess probably I could start of when I first discovered Buddy Holly. I was 12 years old, and I was spending a summer vacation at my aunt's house. And I was kind of getting bored like most kids do. And I said, well, is there anything I can do? And so I didn't go inside and watch TV. And I thought, okay, I'll go inside and watch TV. But I'm sure you all remember the TVs that were the TV stereo combos.
Yeah.
So instead of turning on the TV, I just lifted the top of the stereo, and she had some albums there, and I was going through them, and it was Buddy Holly, it was the Everly Brothers, it was Bobby V, it was Sam Cooke. And like I said, the first album I saw was the Buddy Holly story with that real big close up of Buddy Holly. And I was intrigued by that. So I put the album out, put it on the turntable, took the arm and put it on. And just the minute Buddy Holly started singing, it was like an immediate transformation. It was like I had never heard anything like that before. And it was from that moment I was hooked. And I always tell people, they say, well, you've been researching Buddy Holly for like almost 50 years. It said, have you ever had any other, oh my God, moments with any other artists? And I said, there's only 3 artists that I've ever had an oh my God moment. And I'm sure everybody's list is different. But my list was the Beach Boys, Buddy Holly, and the Ramones. And, pretty much the same reaction with the Ramones as it was with Buddy Holly, that, the very first album I ever heard, actually I came late to the party, was Pleasant Dreams. Now I was stationed in the military, and I was in Germany, and they had a local PX there, and went in there and they had some albums, and I'm flipping through them, and I pulled out Pleasant Dreams. So I took that back to my barracks, put that on, and that whole album. Now, some people may disagree. They have their favorite Ramones album, or they don't like the Ramones, or they love every album the Ramones ever put out. Now, I love every album the Ramones ever put out, but my favorite is Pleasant Dreams. Every song on that LP is just perfect in my opinion, but that's my opinion.
And I think the first time I'd heard of Buddy Holly, like I'm 49 now, born 1974, but I think the first time that I really saw him was in that La Bamba movie when they showed him, getting on the plane and all that stuff. And I've been listening to his music more since I knew you were coming on, and I'm familiar with the Ramones. I've listened to them a good bit, but I need to go a little deeper. I'd probably enjoy it more now on a lot of different levels. And then what else? What are some things about Buddy Holly that stood out about you as far as his life? I don't know much about his life except what I've seen like from movies and stuff, like quick little weird things.
Well, I think Buddy Holly is one of the few artists that I can think of that he was definitely an experimental person. If somebody said, well, hey, this doesn't sound right, let's try this, he'd be the first one to do it. Or, and some artists are probably out there going, it's my way or the highway. So Buddy definitely wasn't like that. He was very willing to experiment with different sounds. So I was thinking of a quote that I heard, I think from Sir Tim Rice, that once said, it's amazing how much material Buddy Holly packed in to so many short years. George Gershwin would have been proud. So, I just think that's amazing because, comparing Buddy Holly to George Gershwin, some people, you got to remember too that a lot of people back then, the music appealed to the kids. It didn't appeal to the adults. So, for somebody to say, compare them to George Gershwin and being an older adult many, many years after Buddy Holly has passed away is a huge compliment.
And I'm surprised, have they had any movies just about Buddy Holly? I'm sure they've had documentaries, but I don't know if they've had like a movie.
They've had several documentaries. I own at least 10 documentaries on DVD. Now there are more, but they tried to do something with the Buddy Holly story with Gary Busey, but there was just so many things in that movie that weren't factual. Now it was a good movie. It was a good movie. It was a fun movie, but it wasn't necessarily a true movie.
I know Gary Busey as Buddy Holly. That's just weird. I don't get that. See that, but yeah. I heard one weird, depressing story. I was debating if I should tell it because it's kind of depressing. One of the Ramones, Rob Zombie, was in touch with them and they were a collector, and I forget which one, but they had been collecting up to the time that they passed away. And I guess he found that out, and it depressed him so much he kind of stopped collecting. And I collect stuff, and it didn't stop me, but I could see how that would, the guy's like passing away and still collecting on his last day on Earth, and then you don't take it with you. Then you don't get to take it. That's the shitty part, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard that story recently. I guess Rob Zombie's friends with him and stuff like that. But what do we know about Buddy Holly's? Like, how did he get started? What was the big hit that started it all? And kind of like the record room and all that stuff.
Well, for me, it was the song Peggy Sue Got Married, which was a song that Buddy Holly had worked on and had written when he had moved from Lubbock to New York. Actually, that's one of the songs that's known as one of the apartment tapes, that he'd sit in his apartment and record several ideas on song. And, even though he tragically passed away, those songs were still left on tape. So they were able to be transferred to records and put out and things like that. So, Peggy Sue was one of my favorites.
And these songs like upset parents back then a lot.
Pardon?
Did the songs like upset parents a lot back then? Is that were they upset?
I don't think it upset parents. I just think that parents didn't understand it, and I think that's probably true of every generation. Every generation, they have their favorite artists. Like, there's songs that kids will mention today, and I go, "Oh my God, that's the worst song I've ever heard." And kids think it's the best song that's ever been put out. But the adults didn't really understand the music. Matter of fact, I was thinking about this today. Buddy Holly had gone to Nashville because he was hoping that he was going to be able to do something with his music in Nashville. But actually, they had kind of hoped that he would his music would have been more of a country type of style. So Owen Bradley, I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but Owen Bradley, Buddy played the song "That'll Be the Day," which, if you like it, you like it. I like the song. Maybe there's some people that don't, but Owen Bradley said it was the worst song he'd ever heard. So I just don't think adults understood the music back then. And, you got to think about it this way. Rock and roll was in its infancy, so.
It was a transition from big band kind of music to a smaller.
Yeah, I think swing is the genre.
Jay, that's probably a better term to a smaller group of people playing different instruments like the electric guitar or and an electric bass as well. Gary, I had a question. You're talking about Buddy being experimental, and I think every day is one of, I think, maybe a little bit more experimental songs in his canon. Like, what was the story about the slapping the knee and the xylophone?
Right. Well, there's actually two different stories. So the one with the slap in the knees was every day. So just to sound like that. Now, Not Fade Away, they didn't use a drum kit on that either. They used a cardboard box, and it gave it a whole completely different sound than a drum head. So, those were two examples of Buddy being experimental and getting the sound that they wanted. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who played the xylophone?
Oh, that was Norman. Well, it wasn't a xylophone; it was a Celeste.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm sorry.
So, and that was when Buddy Holly started to record. Like I said, they lived in Lubbock, so the nearest recording station was in Clovis, New Mexico, which was the Norman Petty studio. So, and it was only 90 miles away. So everybody would load up in a car and head up to the Norman Petty studio, and which gave Buddy a real opportunity to try different things, to be experimental if he wanted to, because they never charged a session fee. It was the song, however long the song took you. And matter of fact, I've even been through a tour of the Norman Petty studio. So it was, there was one part of it that was set up with a regular studio, but there was another part of it that was just that was a house. They had a kitchen and bathroom and, living area. So, if you decided that you had enough of practicing for a while, you could go sit down, you could get something to eat, you could relax a little bit, and then just go back in the studio because it was all in the same environment, the same house. I mean, excuse me, not house, recording studio.
Is it still?
But house isn't incorrect. There are some recording studios that call themselves recording house. So I mean, I think we're okay on that one.
Okay, yeah.
Is it still a working studio, or is it a museum?
Well, right now, the last time I heard, it's more of a museum, and they do tours through there. Now, when I went through there, I was lucky enough that I got my own personal tour, so they pretty much took their time with me. But usually, it's two or three people or a group of people or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty. It's just for show these days because Norman Petty has since passed away. His wife, Vi Petty, she's passed away a long time ago. So yeah, it's just pretty much used just for tours now.
Okay, and there is the modern what is it, the Buddy Holly music hall? That's not the right proper name for it, but there is a modern auditorium in Lubbock.
Right.
And have you been there, or do you know a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, I actually do. It's called the Buddy Holly Hall, and they do have performances there. And like I said, I'm only going off of what I've been told because I haven't been out there. But they do have shows out there, and they have office space and I believe a couple of dining areas and things like that. So yeah.
Okay, and Gary, you do document a lot of the stories about making the trek from Lubbock to Clovis in your couple books on Buddy Holly. What are those titles? Where do people get them?
Okay. Well, first off, I was going to just let you know that I pretty much have been a research. I did most of the research on all of those things, but I definitely couldn't have got those books out without the help of several of my friends who live in the United Kingdom. Tony Warren, Peter Gibson, and Peter Fraser Dunnett. Yeah, so they helped me pull it together because, you're talking about like 60 years worth of researching information and then getting it all down. So it's, all written down and ready to go to the publisher. That book is called 6 Decades of Rock and Roll Memories. And the other book is called Words of Love, 1959 to 2009. That the book Words of Love 1959-2009 has memories from the classmates that Buddy went to school with at Lubbock High School in 1955, and just a whole bunch of other memories from people that are associated with the Buddy Holly legacy, friends, family, and fans. And both of those books are available at Amazon.com.
Okay. And since you're cover such a lengthy time period, the Crickets never really broke up, and told Jeffrey, "Oh, I can help out, and I have some props I could bring in, but there's Eric Clapton's first solo CD. The people who are listed in the drawing of who's who of all the people on the back cover. Eric wanted a couple of the people identified as Crickets. So it seems to be a testament to Buddy's legacy that people like Eric Clapton were seeking them out, bringing them on to his 1970 solo release.
Well, and it just got me to thinking about this too, because Johnny Rivers also, J.I. Allison, who just recently passed away, it's no secret he was a very unique drummer, and so a lot of other talented musicians sought him out, have him play on their album. So you have like people like Eric Clapton, Johnny Rivers, and just a whole host of others. So and just like you were saying a few minutes ago, that the Crickets never really retired. With that being said, I was lucky enough to actually see the basically the last formation of the Crickets in 2012, which was Sonny Curtis, J.I. Allison, and Joe B. Maldon. And they played at a little venue called the Arcada Theater. And oh boy, and then I'm having a senior moment. St. Charles, Illinois. Sorry. So so 57 to 2012. That's a pretty long time. And actually, they had really been started before that. But I would say around 57 is when things really started taking off.
And don't worry about the senior moments. I'm 49 and I have the weirdest moments ever. I think they're using energy weapons on us at this point.
Probably.
Probably frying us, Putin and whoever else. But yeah, it's great that you have this much passion for a musician. I've always been like drawn to bands, and I like Buddy Holly, and I'll listen to him more since you talk about him so much for sure. It piqued my interest more. I was listening to him going through stuff before we did the show just to try to get into that energy.
Right.
But a lot of weird bands who have unique voices I like The Doors, Alice in Chains, Tool, Typo Negative. Like always been drawn to like a lot of the music that comes out now is just like the same weird crap. Like it sounds like the same dude singing. So that's why Buddy Holly and the Ramones, they have unique voices. So that's something that stands out. Like a lot of stuff on the radio is like, this sounds like the same dude that just did the other crappy song that I just heard. Like they just sound like, I don't even know. It's like some whiny emo, or I don't know what. It's not upset emos. I don't.
Right.
But anyway, they're already upset. But but anyway, so what else in Buddy Holly's life? Like, did anything weird happen the day that he got on that plane? Because I always remember the La Bamba movie and him getting on the plane, and they didn't really go into his life that much. But is there what do we know about that day and, you know, the tragedies that happened with that?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, you know, it was the plane was really it was rented for Buddy Holly and his band. But what had happened is the Big Bopper wasn't feeling real good. So, you know, so he asked if he could, you know, get a ride on the plane instead of, oh boy, Waylon Jennings. I'm sorry, I'm having a senior moment today. But so, and then what had happened is, so they were getting in the car. So now getting in the car after the show to head to the airport, and you'd have now it would be Buddy Holly, and it would be the Big Bopper, and Tommy Allsup. Well, Tommy Allsup, who was a member of Buddy Holly's band for the Winter Dance Party, had forgotten something inside the Surf Ballroom. So he went in, and there he met Richie Valens, and Richie Valens said, "You sure you won't let me, you know, take the plane instead of you?" And so Tommy also had a 50-cent piece in his pocket, and he flipped it. And Richie Valens, and he told Richie to call it, and Richie said heads, and it was heads. So Tommy also gathered his stuff, getting ready to get back on the bus. Richie Valens comes out. So now you have Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and the Richie Valens getting in the car, headed to go to the airport. So, so maybe that's kind of something weird that you might have been interested in that you might not have known about.
And who's the Big Bopper? That's Giles Perry. Is that?
Well, his nickname was JP, but
Okay.
his birth name was Giles Perry Richardson. You know, and I was actually thinking about that today too. There's so many people out there that think that the Big Bopper was just a one-hit wonder. Well, he wasn't. You know, he had several hits. A couple of his hits were recorded by other people. Running Bear, Johnny Preston, and even George Jones recorded it. So, but you know, when he first started out, he was a disc jockey. But he started to write some of these songs, and you know, they, like I said, Chantilly Lace came out, and which was the B-side of the record, and the A-side of the record. A-side of the record was the Purple People Eater meets the Witch Doctor, because back at that time, two popular characters were Purple People Eater by Sheb Woolley, and so they decided to do that, and So, he started to get a lot of play on the B side instead of the A side, and the A side is what took off.
Very cool. And
excuse me. And I also meant to say, I kind of cut myself off. But I also meant to say that the Purple People Eater meets the Witch Doctor. The Witch Doctor part came in because of Alvin and the Chipmunks, which at that point was doing pretty good on the charts, the Chipmunks. So that's why they did Purple People Eater meets the Witch Doctor.
Okay, that's some trivia I didn't know. So, and doing some of the show prep for this evening, and and we've spoken other times.
Jay, are you there? Is that Jay?
I'm here.
You place a lot of emphasis on the success of the Buddies tour of Britain. Here's another one of the that's like one of the Albert Lee. It was supposed to see him on one of the tours, but 13 years later, was about 13 years later, he would actually be in the cricket. So there's another, a little bit more modern musician who has his roots to Buddy Holly during that tour. What can you tell us a little bit about that British tour? We heard a little bit about the winter dance party tour, but what about the British tour?
Well, the British tour, Buddy and the Crickets were there for 15 days. They'd done like 2 shows a day, which was 30 shows in the time they'd been there, and they were on television 3 times. So they were pretty much, if they weren't on stage, they were sleeping. If they weren't sleeping, they were they were traveling to the next venue.
Okay.
And on the last night that they were performing before they were to leave Britain, I believe they were at the Hammersmith Gaumont, and J.I. and Joe B were kind of playing around, messing around with one another, and Joe B stood up and knocked the cap off of Buddy's tooth. So there was for a moment a possibility of Buddy not going on, but he decided to take a piece of chewing gum and put it where the cap had fallen off. So
that's a good fix. They have some actual wax for that. But you also earlier we spoke about, you said Buddy Holly had become kind of experimental. And rock, and also rock had just begun, and then it doesn't start. I mean, very soon after rock, 10, 15 years, it begins to splinter into different offshoots, like metal, heavy metal, acid rock, progressive rock, etc., etc. So did anyone ever get his opinion on some of those other outstanding experimental bands, Pink Floyd, King Crimson? Was he aware of those movements, and if so, what did he think? Because he must have gone through, because he was a pioneer of rock and roll, so he went through being called, experimental and whatnot, and maybe for it.
Well, so you also got to remember that, but he did die February 1959, so he wasn't around for like some of those other groups like Pink Floyd or whatever. So, but Buddy at one point, he was kind of trying to move away from the music a little bit, and he had actually hoped to have a recording studio, and he wanted to have a recording studio in Lubbock, Texas, and he even went and bought property for this recording studio, but sadly that never happened. But Buddy I think was more into wanting to produce other people. You know, so I think he was trying to take a little bit of a break from the music side of it, and he was definitely interested in getting into the production side of it.
Yeah, going into the production side of it, a lot of singer-songwriters have done that in the past. But why was he not successful in doing it? Why? I mean, with his, I mean, he wasn't a horrible guy. He made some good music. He was fairly famous. Why was he unable to get it going?
Well, because actually that he had really started, doing the thing with the studio and everything, and shortly after that, but before anything with the studio could transpire, he was involved in the plane crash.
I was going to suggest that, with some pioneers of independent film have tried to do their own independent films, and Hollywood kind of blocks them, gets in their way. And I thought maybe that was what was going on in the music industry. Maybe there's some union things that got in the way of him getting the studio going.
No, no, no. I fully believe that he would have had it going and up and running and producing his own artists. Had he lived. Matter of fact, yeah, actually, Buddy saw the talent in Waylon Jennings, and that was like people that he would be interested in working with and seeing if he could have taken it further. And like I said, Waylon Jennings was one of the musicians that became the Crickets for the Winter Dance Party. So,
Gary, as we look at this couple year period that really left a big impact on the music scene. We also have later in 1959 the star of the Twilight Zone series. What is it about the culture or Rod Serling and Buddy Holly that really kind of gets a renaissance going? And Arlen Schumer was talking about that last week. He
right,
dovetailed into going from the Twilight Zone to the Sean Connery Bond films.
right,
Your interests are going from Buddy to Rod Serling. Probably later on, we're going to get into maybe all this Renaissance coalesced at Woodstock, and then
right.
Sean Auna, and working with the Ramones. So how do we trace this artistic development emerging out of 1959?
Okay, well, speaking a little bit about the Twilight Zone, what I think one of the reasons why there's such a wide appeal for the Twilight Zone, especially here's just one good example. My grandson is now watching the Twilight Zone. I also have another grandson who just graduated from college, and I think once or twice he's had a Twilight Zone marathon at his apartment. But I think what's so interesting about that is because the stories are timeless. Whether you're talking about 1959, 2009, or hopefully not 2029. Hopefully we improve a little bit, but we haven't begun to fix our human issues, and our problems with hate, our problems with bigotry, our problems with other things, and and that touches all cultures. It touches men, it touches women, it touches kids, It touches people whether you're Christian or atheist or Catholic. It touches people whether you're from the UK or the United States or India or Africa, because we all experience those things. And that's why those stories still resonate with us. I'm sitting here thinking now of just one of those stories, Walking Distance, where it's a guy that is tired of his dead end job that's going nowhere, and he's really stressed and he wants to go back in time. He just wants to go back to where things were simpler. Now, we all know that you can't do that, but in the Twilight Zone, you can. So, I think there's probably not one of us that would say, man, I wish I could go back 10 years. I wish I could go back 20 years. And if I did, then, I'd do this differently or I'd do that differently. So I think those stories just resonate with us, resonate with people. Um, um, and then season 4, they had hour-long episodes. And a lot of the hour episodes I like, but I more like the format of the half hour. And I think the black and white adds a touch of eeriness to it, so I kind of like that fact. I know I've heard some people say today, "Well, I'd watch the Twilight Zone, but I'd only watch it if it was in color." So that takes away from that takes away from why I think why most fans prefer the black and white. Color really doesn't add anything; it just adds another layer of something that doesn't need to be there.
Well, but it's funny you also mentioned the black and white episodes. There's and I don't know if it's a true story or not, but there's I guess it's maybe one of those internet wives' tales that some younger generations went back and they started watching some of the older TV shows that were in black and white, not knowing that they were in black and white. And when they turned the shows on, they walked up to the TV trying to adjust the color and figure out why the show wasn't in color. Well,
right.
It wasn't filmed in color as it was broadcast in black and white. So that if that's true, that's kind of sad. But I have a degree in making video or TV shows, and I have a minor degree in making still photography. And color's great, but there's so many chemicals involved in developing color film that you really need a computer and a device, a really expensive machine to do it. Black and
Right.
white, you can do it yourself, but you can get some nice contrast out of it, and just the generation today just doesn't realize or appreciate as much, I guess, our generations, how they, black and white actually is a really cool film and media to work in.
Right. And, like I said, growing up in that era, we didn't have our first color television until 1974. So it's like that day in 74, when you turn that television on, going, wow, that's cool. But other than that, it was black and white television. So, I can still remember coming home, watching have a black and white television, and flipping it on. And, granted, these shows were recorded in black and white anyway, but, watching shows like, Groucho Marx and, the old Twilight Zone episodes, Groucho Marx would Bet Your Life and the old Twilight Zone episodes, and shows of that caliber. So I don't know. I just don't think that color, some of those things, I think they actually look horrible in color. They don't look better. Like one of my favorite films, scared me back in the day when I was an 8-year-old kid, was the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Kevin McCarthy. Now, I just could not imagine that film in color, nor would I want to see it in color. So it was pretty creepy in black and white, and I liked it like that.
Yeah, Gary, you mentioned Walking Distance. That episode is a pretty autobiographical story. I think you've been to Recreation Park.
Yes, I have.
And do you want to tell a little bit about the proximity between Rod's boyhood home, the park, the carousel, and how all of that is brought together in that episode?
Well, I mean, I think it's just Rod recalling how life used to be and that life was much simpler. Now, granted, if I've got this correctly, and I think I do, I believe the day after he graduated high school, he shipped off, to join the military. So, but it was there in the military that he saw things that he, would affect him for the rest of his life. And so some of the things, some of the stories he would write was just his way of trying to come to terms with all the things that he experienced during wartime, and that nobody should have to experience. So you're talking about episodes like the Purple Testament, or
That's a good example.
yeah. So things of that caliber. So and I think Rod always looked at writing as being very cathartic. That it helped him deal with a lot of the feelings and things that he was having. So, but as far as Recreation Park, yes, I've been there, and I was actually able to ride on the carousel, which was nice. It still operates. It's still running to this day. And this weekend, there will be the unveiling of the Rod Serling statue. So it's very fitting that Rod Serling was born on Christmas Day, 1925. And here we are, almost 100 years later, and a statue of him in Recreation Park. So,
and if people want to know more, here are books I'd highly recommend from some of our friends. Nick Parisi's Rod Serling, His Life, Work, and Imagination. And here's another one, The Twilight Zone, Unlocking the Doors to a Television Classic by Martin Grahams Jr. So Gary and I are...
I consider the book by Martin and Nick Parisi to both be the Bibles of the Twilight Zone and Life and Times of Rod Serling. But like I said, also too, that although there's been a lot of people that maybe didn't care for the series, there's also the Night Gallery. So this is the original book that I got back in the day, written by Scott Skelton and Jim Benson. So years later, they put out a hard copy version with about 400 more pages. It's got all the paintings in it, so that's pretty good. So, and then one more, if I could just do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And here's another one, The Art of Darkness. So, like I said, if you got anybody that's interested in the Night Gallery, there's a couple of Facebook sites, and you can always go to www.nightgallery.com. They've got their own website, and you can get the books. You can get posters of some of the paintings. So, yeah, there's that.
Have you ever come across Rod Serling's Western, The Loner? I got a hold of. I haven't watched it yet, but it's like, I guess, a Western he did. I don't know if it's weird or if it's just like a plain Western like back then, but something called The Loner he did.
Yes, I have, and it's actually a pretty good show. But Rod did so much other work too. He did a lot of work on Playhouse 90. And I don't know if you're familiar with the film Requiem for a Heavyweight.
No, not.
That was a story that was written by Rod Serling, and Requiem for a Heavyweight, I believe, was starred Jackie Gleason. So yeah, and there's
Gleason or Marlon Brando.
Pardon?
It's Jackie Gleason and Jack Palance. It's Gleason. I see it right here. Jack Palance was in it.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, he wrote I think bulk of the script on that one.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry.
and Arlen spoke last week about Rod wrote the majority of the script for Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that too.
Right, right. And
I think a
also
lot.
something, I'm sure that Arlen probably covered this, but everybody's quite familiar that the first episode of The Twilight Zone was Where's Everybody with Earl Holliman. But it almost wasn't the first episode because there was another story that Rod Serling had written, and it was supposed to be the debut episode was a story called The Happy Place. So, make a long story short, The Happy Place never happened, and Where's Everybody did. But I'm thinking when I went to the Serling Fest in 2009, there was there was kind of like a stage presentation where where a few people had on the stage, took certain parts and they read the script. So that was kind of nice for The Happy Place.
So yeah, and Earl
Pardon?
went on to be what Angie Dickinson's sidekick in her show in the 70s.
Policewoman.
Yeah, that's it. But there's like so Robert Redford, kind of got his breakthrough by appearing in the Twilight Zone.
Right. Yeah, actually,
Jack
he was
Klugman.
he was in an episode called "Nothing in the Dark," and one of the main character in the movie was a woman by the name of Gladys Cooper, and she played an old woman that was afraid to leave her house, and they were going to condemn the building, and she was afraid to leave her house because she thought if she left the house that she opened the door, that death would come in. So yeah, Robert Redford played a cop that got shot, and she brought him in. She brought Robert Redford in and took care of him. So I'm not going to spoil the ending, but yeah, that's a very good episode. One of my top 5, I would say.
But there's some Bill Mooney. There's like so many people. Kind of got their big break with their appearance in the Twilight Zone, and would go on to like Jack Klugman and the Odd Couple and
Right.
Match
Well,
Game after after watching that after school. But Quincy, so there were so many people who would have we would have watched growing up. I'll go back to that renaissance that started in the late 50s.
right. Well, what's so really interesting, and it just got me to thinking about this. I know you're talking earlier about Star Trek, but it's interesting to see how many people from Star Trek, well, not necessarily got their start, but appeared on the Twilight Zone. So you have William Shatner.
Yep.
You have Leonard Nimoy.
Correct.
You have George Takei.
George Takei.
And I can't think of his first name now for the life of me, but Doohan.
James Doohan.
Yeah, James Doohan. So that's pretty good right there. And then also too, you take another popular show in the 60s was the Beverly Hillbillies. So,
that's not these three guys who was on there. There's a minor character, and he was the first supporting character in the Star Trek franchise to play 3 different aliens on several different episodes. He plays Spock's father as a Vulcan. He played a Romulan commander against Captain Kirk in an earlier episode and gets killed. And then in the movies, he is the Klingon commander that gets killed by V'ger.
So
and
what
his name
goes
is
around
Mark
comes
Leonard.
around.
He's on, yeah, Mark Leonard, and he was on the show quite a few times, I believe, on Twilight Zone, more than once.
Right. And, like I said, and I kind of jumped in a little bit, probably more than I should have, but just so that people aren't saying, well, what the heck was he talking about? But the Beverly Hillbillies, you know, that show, big in the 60s, I think it was 6, 7 years they were on. But, and, you know, there was so many people from that cast, once again, not necessarily got their start, but did appear on that show. So, you know, you have Buddy Epson was on there.
Yep.
You have Donna Douglas was on there. You had Nancy Culp.
Nancy Culp, who played Jane. Yeah.
Yeah, who played Jane. And for the life of me, I cannot think of his name now, but it's the guy that played Milburn Drysdale.
Oh yeah, I don't remember his name either.
So that's pretty much a who's who of, you know, like I said, just to look it up.
The main reason why they shared so many characters between those several shows, and there's a couple other shows as well. Some of those characters some of those character actors from all three shows also appear on Beverly Hillbillies. They were getting filmed at Desilu Studios on the back lot of Paramount, and Desilu stands for Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. So those, and I think also Frank, not Frank. He did The Land of the Giants and
Irwin Allen.
Irwin Allen, thank you. One of his shows was being filmed at the same time. So you'll see also some co-stars from the shows we're talking about also on Irwin Allen's show. And I forget which one was being filmed simultaneously or around the same time as Star Trek, but we all would have watched it. It might be
Lost in Space?
Might be Lost in Space. I think it's Lost in Space.
Oh, I know. I was a big Irwin Allen fan. So, if it was Irwin Allen, I was there. You know, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Land of the Giant, Time Tunnel, which sadly James Barron passed away here just recently. Yeah.
That Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was a really innovative show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they stole for that show. They stole some techniques from a 1960s show that actually started in the 50s. It's now that it's in Japan. It's their Walt Disney World. Basically, it's their Mickey Mouse character. It's a show called Uro Taroman, which translates to Ultraman. The first show was called Ultra Q. But there are a few episodes in Ultraman. The very first one where they use a submarine. And they make it look like it's underwater. And the way they did that is they put a fish tank in front of the camera with bubbles going up, and the model of the submarine is in a smoke-filled, blue painted wall room, and they just marionette it like with strings through the scene. And with the bubbles, it looks like it's really underwater, and it's not. They're in a studio somewhere in Tokyo. So they stole those techniques.
It makes me think. I don't know if you remember this or not, but you remember Night Flight?
Hang on, let me get to
I'm sorry.
A little bit further. So basically, they're using marionette puppets, and then there's what's the guy's name? I can't remember, but Thunderbirds.
Ray Harryhausen.
No, not Ray Harryhausen. The guy who did Thunderbirds was Jerry something or other.
I know who you're talking about. But
Jerry
Anderson.
So
it was Stingray and Thunderbirds and all
of Jerry Anderson's TV shows that he produced. All the characters.
That's right, Anderson.
Well, he also produced a space show called Space 1999, which lasted 2 seasons. And guess what? One of the main characters in that was a marionette. Can you guess which character it was?
I can't.
These characters are probably on every episode at least once, and they were the Eagles.
My goodness! Okay.
The spaceships they flew were marionette puppets, puppeteered by his marionette guys, and they were in-camera special effects. There was no digital backgrounds. There was no re-editing. All they did was put sound effects behind it. Woo woo woo. The engine noises and whatnot. But you're watching live actors, and then they cut in marionette puppets for spaceships. It's brilliant.
What's so funny, kind of makes me think about that. We're talking about experimentation and everything. So have you seen the movie Asteroid City?
I have not.
It's on Amazon Prime. I don't know if I could say that or not, but it's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
what it is. What it is, it's kind of like, we're talking about the experimentation part of it, but it's like live actors and like AI created scenes.
Oh wait, I have seen that. You're
AI
talking about,
created
I
scenery.
saw that. With Bill Murray, the Wes Anderson guy.
No, no, not Bill Murray. It's Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks. Yeah, I saw it. And the Alien and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good, but you have to get yourself into the mindset of what you're watching, because it kind of messes with you. So you don't know if it's a real person or it's a avatar. But then I think back, what was that? Well, yeah, Avatar. That was the name of the movie. Where it was, I think the first time I saw that, where you didn't know if you're looking at a person or was it a generated image.
Yeah, that Wes Anderson, and he does some weird stuff. He's done some wild movies. All of his movies are different. I think he did Fantastic Mr. Fox with all the stop
Right.
animation. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I look for stop animation stuff, and there's a lot of weird stuff out there. If you really look for it, there's some crazy stop animation. I'm always looking for a stop animation fix.
Have you, Jeffrey? Have you seen Return to Oz? That has a claymation.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's good.
Yeah, that is.
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that is a good movie
Cutting
with
edge.
James Franco.
But
I
the
know.
Return to Oz.
Am I thinking of a different movie?
Return to Oz is a Wizard of Oz movie with Fairuza Balk as a child, and
Okay, okay.
I
So
told
it was,
her
okay.
it's
Yeah,
weird.
supposedly the second book in the series, I believe.
Yeah, it was actually kind of a dark movie, but I thought it had some. Since a lot of the show's been about how creative some of these musicians and artists have been. I think the claymation and some of the costumes, like the roller skate uh, guys that chase them towards the beginning of the
Yeah,
movie, are uh, uh, very well done. It might make it a little bit more scary for younger people, but uh, for more mature viewers, it it really does offer uh, s- s- uh, how technology can make um, movies more interesting, such as the use of
Um,
claymation.
well, I saw yesterday, I think it was a couple of days ago, that they're actually, not this year, but next year, there's supposed to be a Minecraft movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've already seen the trailer for that, and it looks very, very unsettling. But yeah, but it's amazing what they can do with um, the different techniques and stuff with AI and editing software and all that kind of good stuff.
so what do you want to share with us about the Ramones? I know we got that in the title. We talked about them a little bit, but what else would
Okay.
you like to share about them? I know there's a lot, but what would you specifically
Well,
like?
there's actually a couple of things I'd like to share. Like I said, we were talking earlier about the Crickets and the 6 decades of rock and roll memories. There is a book that's coming out in 2026, and it's called The Enduring Legacy of the Ramones. All Good Cretans Go to Heaven by Jen. That's Jen with 2 N's, L. Beckwith. And there's actually a Facebook site if anybody's interested in it. All Good Cretans Go to Heaven. If you want to check that out. But basically, it's just a collection of going to be a lot of unreleased photographs that have been found and interviews with family, friends, and fans of the Ramones, and a lot of good stuff. So I was on the research end of that project. So yeah, it's interesting when you talk about like 5 decades of researching a band. There's a lot of stuff to go through. So, yeah. So that's going to be coming out hopefully um, in 2026. It's going to be published by DeWolf Publishing. Amy DeWolf. Hopefully I got that name right. I hope I didn't mispronounce it. And like I said, I've been working on a couple of other things too. I'm right now. It's also nothing but a Facebook site, but it's called "The Strange and Curious Case of Joey Ramone and Buddy Holly," and it's just interesting all the different nods and tie-ins that both of those guys had to their lives and their careers. So that's something to check out too. And, I think the only other thing I was going to say is that, like I said, I'm still researching Twilight Zone stuff, doing all that kind of good stuff. But I'm also partnering with another person that I know. It's a fellow writer, Nick Delicato. I actually met him about 4 or 5 years ago. He wrote a prequel to a show that is going to be celebrating its 70th anniversary coming up. So I read it and I thought it was pretty good. And I thought, you know what? This needs a sequel. So right now we're working out a sequel. I wish I could tell you the name of the show, but I can't right now. Hopefully you have me back on when I have more information for you. But yeah, so that's fun too. But other than that, I'm just doing my research. Continuing with whatever I can find with Buddy Holly and the Ramones and Twilight Zone and Night Gallery and all that other good stuff. I also meant to tell you, I got interested in the Night Gallery when I was a young kid. We're talking about going back, wishing you could go back to be a kid. I still remember going to the local drugstore and collecting all those DC comics. Do you remember House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Tales of the Unexpected?
Tales of the Unexpected. Yes, I remember that. Not the
Yeah.
others.
So that's how I got interested in the Night Gallery end of it. So, yeah. Matter of fact, if you're interested in checking out the series anymore, it took them like 50 years to do it, but they finally put out a Blu-ray set of all 3 seasons of Night Gallery.
Yeah, if I have those on DVD, need to get back into them. I love anthology stuff like Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, some of the newer stuff, Creep Show. Like I love the movies, and now there's a show on Shudder that tells a little Creep Show stories. Tales from the Dark Side. There's so many good ones. There's one weird one with Steve Buscemi's in it, some called Monsters. That's like every episode's like these crazy weird monsters situations,
Right.
and Twilight Zone's the godfather of them all, isn't there? I know there might have been, what was One Step Beyond? I looked that up recently. Was that before Twilight Zone?
One Step Beyond, I believe that was around the same time. But
Yeah.
like I said, there's, One Step Beyond, there's Thriller, there's all kinds of stuff. And, if you fast forward to today, I keep telling people about these shows, and some people go, well, I'm going to check them out. I'm going to check them out. And they never do. But Amazon Prime, have you ever seen a series called Solo? Have you ever seen a series called Tales from the Loop?
No.
I've heard of that. I've heard of Tales from the Loop.
And then, if you switch over to Netflix, you got Cabinet of Curiosities.
That was good.
Guillermo del Toro. His take on Night Gallery. And, I think maybe Mark Eddy mentioned it to you. I'm not sure if he did or not. But I've been working on a series called The Night Zone, which is technically my homage to Night Gallery and Twilight Zone. That's why I call it Night Zone. So far I've got like 6 stories written, and I'm preparing to write another 6. But at this point, not too much is happening with them. They're just sitting. So hopefully I'm able to do something with those down the line. So, if anybody's send them my way.
Okay, and Gary, you have also been working on a writing project on a lot of the like repetition of some of the use of
Right.
props. Can you tell us, what you're learning about the Twilight Zone through, you know, uh, the
Well, I think I know
repetition
where you're
of
going. I think I know where
props?
you're going with this. Like a lot of shows, and even back then, the 50s, they still had budget constraints.
Mhm.
That uh, uh, that can't maybe reshoot another scene because that means more money, and we only have this much money to do it. But and I don't think Twilight Zone was any exception because there's some times where there would be props from one episode that would show up in another episode. Now, do I think those were done purposely? Yeah, some of them were done purposely. They were trying to see if how careful people were
Yeah,
in
if anyone
catching
paid
certain
attention.
things. But then there was certain things that were used just for prop reuse. So it's not like trying to pull a quick one over on you and see how you can
Well,
see if
I
you
also,
notice. But it was kind of weird because I was noticing, and maybe this will make you want to go check out some of the episodes. But Nothing in the Dark, which was the one we were talking about earlier, real close to the end, if you look up on the wall, you'll see a picture of a Scotty dog. Now, there's another episode, which is one for the Angels. If you look close enough on the wall, where Ed Wynn is talking to, Murray Hamilton, the guy that was in the Jaws movie.
The
If you look
mayor
real
of
carefully on
Amity.
the wall, you see that same picture. But what's really weird is I was watching that episode the other day, and I caught something, and I even took a picture of it just so I'd make sure my mind wasn't going screwy or something. And it was Cinderella that was on the wall, and I thought to myself that was pretty. Now, whether that was done purposely or not, I thought it was kind of interesting because in the episode, Ed Wynn, um, like I said, I don't want to spoil the episode for people that haven't seen it, but he makes a deal with Death to not take his life. So, somebody else is going to take his place, and Death is going to come back at midnight to collect. But what I thought was so funny is that Cinderella on the wall, she had to be home by midnight. So I thought that was kind of cool.
yeah, so foreshadowing.
Right, and then there's a couple of other things that I've caught that I thought was kind of interesting. There was a um, um, there was one episode called Mr. Beavis. It's got Orson Welles in it, and he's kind of like a guardian angel that wants to give Orson Welles the life he never had, but he really doesn't want a new life. He just wants the life he has. But he makes a comment about the guy that's going to give him the new life is that he helped Ben-Hur. Well, like I said, once again, I'm going to try not to spoil this, but close to the end, you see another Ben-Hur reference in that episode. So, just all kinds of different stuff, things that I find interesting. Like there
Well,
was an episode called Printer's Devil, where there's this type of whiskey called Pebble Ames, and you actually see that sitting on a desk. Now, if you go back and now you watch another episode called In Praise of Pip, it's got Bill Mummy and Jack Klugman in it, and Jack Klugman opens a drawer, and there's a smaller bottle, but it's the same thing that says Pebble Ames. So I found that kind of interesting. Also, another thing, speaking of In Praise of Pip, was that Bill Mummy was referring to Jack Klugman in that episode as Pop, because that was his dad, but he called him Pop. But what I thought was kind of interesting is that the episode was filmed in Palisade Ocean Park, which is POP. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe a little too weird for some people, but I just thought that that was kind of an interesting connection.
Well,
Yeah.
I read something also on IMDb that all of the male characters in the first season were all described as being 36 years old.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you're not the first person that's mentioned that. But another nice thing about the Twilight Zone, not just making everybody 36 years old, but was I think people like to watch a show where they kind of know a little bit about the backstory of somebody and what's their name and how old they are and what they're going through and what they'd like to achieve, and then actually see it play out on the screen. So I thought that was kind of always a nice touch to the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, Gary, you made a reference, or another time when we spoke. You said the what was the Fats, Jack Klugman and Jonathan Winters?
A game of pool.
Okay, Sandusky, Ohio had a significant backstory.
Well, like I said, I just find some of the connections interesting. One of the reasons that I decided, I also have another Facebook site called God, Death, Heaven, and Hell in the Twilight Zone, is I just thought that some of the connections were interesting. And yes, if they were connected religiously, I don't think that that's something the writers were trying to do. I think it's just a matter of point. But I just pretty much just put my findings on that Facebook site because people thought I was trying to make a religious point by saying that the writers purposely did these things. But getting back to what you were saying earlier, I kind of thought it was funny in the game of pool because once again, I don't want to spoil the ending, but a character is told to go to Mason's pool room in Sandusky, Ohio. Well, what's really interesting is that Sandusky, Ohio was one of the original places where the Freemasons started. So once again, I know the writer of that story was not trying to make a religious point. I just thought that that was an interesting connection, and that's it. And the writer of that story was George Clayton Johnson. So, like I said, so yeah, that was going to be a book, but I decided just to put it out on a Facebook site in case if anybody was interested, they could read the stuff that I had found. But yeah, I just always thought it was interesting because when I was first thinking about doing the book, I thought to myself, it's kind of weird that a lot of the stories seem to be about the afterlife. And heaven's kind of mentioned, and and God, the name God is mentioned, or somebody says, "God help me," or whatever. And I just thought that that was interesting that popped up in so many episodes. So I began to do some of the research, and it was kind of interesting. Once again, I don't really feel like the writers were trying to make a religious point. It's just that I found it quite interesting that some of them accidentally made a religious point. You know what I'm saying? So that never physically became a book. But like I said, if anybody's interested in it, the findings are God, Death, Heaven, and Hell in the Twilight Zone.
Well, and you do have a revelation for the episode To Serve Man.
Right. Well, it was kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember. There's a certain language. Gleeman, something like that. I'd have to look back at my notes again, but there is a word in that dialect, and the word is Canamit. And in their dialect, that word means savory. But once again, I don't think that the writers were trying to make any point to a word that was written in some dialect. But I just thought it was interesting that to serve man was the Canamites. And, well, we all know how that story ends. So, once again, not trying to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it, but
That's an episode that fits in perfectly for the Church of Mabus viewers.
mm-hmm. But and you know something else now that I'm thinking about this. Now everybody's familiar with the episode "Time Enough at Last," and I don't know how many of your viewers. I'm sure probably quite a few of them are. They know the closing narration of that episode, and part of the closing of that narration is "Of Mice and Men" and Henry Bemis. But what's really interesting is that Burgess Meredith, who appeared in that episode, also played in the film Of Mice and Men by George Steinbeck. I believe he's the guy that wrote the book. But yeah, he was in the movie Of Mice and Men. So I thought that was another cool connection.
Gary, what about if people want to learn a little bit more, or extend their research into Buddy Holly and a lot of the mysteries surrounding the plane crash? Your friend Ryan Vandergriff
Right.
has a book on it.
Well, he actually has 3 books, and he was going to work on a 4th, which he had information for, but other projects came up, and so he decided to continue on those. I kind of would have liked to have seen the 4th book because, Ryan Vandergriff is somebody that really threw himself into the research. It took him over. I'm trying to think, way over 10 years to 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 find the people that had attended all the winter dance parties and all the venues and get people's remembrances and things like that. So yeah, it took quite a while.
Yeah, I thought I thought the two of you are just scholars on this subject, and I just wanted Ryan to get a plug for what he has done. He has very extensive knowledge. It's almost like he's like a walking encyclopedia of.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, we immediately gravitated towards one another. So his name is Ryan Vandergriff. I don't know if he's back on Facebook anymore. He was at one point, but his books were titled "Dancing as If There's No Tomorrow," and then there's another book called boy. Once again, I'm having another senior moment, but I cannot think of the title of the second book right now. It might be "Dancing as If There's No Tomorrow" Part 2, but then his third book is in Flanders Field.
That's it.
I've heard of that.
So
one.
yeah, and I think I can't say for sure, but if you would be able to check Amazon.com, I think that book is available in Kindle. So even if you can only, I know some people, they don't want a digital version; they want the hard copy, like myself. But if somebody was interested in reading, some of the things that he's found out, I would highly suggest it.
Yeah, Ryan interviewed over 1,000 people for his.
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, like I said, I believe he even moved to Clear Lake for a short period of time, but then he went back to Lubbock, Texas, and I'm not really quite for sure where he's at right now. But um, I would suggest Googling his name. But he's got some other books and things that he's been working on writing. So yeah, um, uh, like I said, I definitely check those out.
Yeah, Gary, what are some other, you know, as we've been speaking for over the last 90 minutes about some of these, bands and, the TV shows that
Mhm.
might have been before a lot of the viewers' time, but they impacted how we grew up. They left a
Right,
legacy.
right.
Um, eh, how do the like your interest in the Ramones kind of seems a little um no, not out of character.
Out of context, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, with say Buddy Holly, but w- if you look at CBGB and how they were getting started, which is documented in Gary Valentine's New York Rocker
Hmm.
book. How, how were the Ramones an experimental band with
Well, I think I
no
see where you're going with
frills?
this. So one of the things is, huge accolades to Tommy Ramone, who was, I would say he was pretty much one of the head people that, helped the Ramones, himself included, come up with an image and to do all the things they needed to do. One of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to try to do straightforward rock and roll. You take a lot of groups that were coming out at that time, like Yes, and Led Zeppelin and groups like that. So it was nothing to have uh, a 20-minute drum solo or a 15-minute not a drum solo, but guitars going for 15 minutes and nobody singing or anything. And so they kind of stripped everything back and just made it, took out all the excess. And, I think their big thing is that they wanted to try to bring back um, the fun times that music used to have, you know, but basically creating their own style. So if you listen to um,
Lobotomy?
Lobotomy and things like that, well, here's a real good example. Blitzkrieg Bop.
Yeah.
The Ramones were basically looking and saying, the Bay City Rollers, look at that song that they have out, Saturday. So they wanted to have something kind of like that. So that's where they came up with Blitzkrieg Bop. So they
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
huh? So and you take songs like Rock and Roll High School and Sheena is a Punk Rocker. Those songs are packed with fun. And and there's one line, and I was talking about the album earlier, Pleasant Dreams. And there's one line in one of the songs that Joey Ramone sings where he says, where did all the fun songs go? We all know what happened to them. And I think pretty much that was his way of saying that, it doesn't have to be a 20-minute drum solo or anything like it. just stripped back rock and roll the way it was meant to be, you know. And I was actually talking to somebody about this a couple of days ago. I said, "You're very familiar with the song Susie is a Headbanger." Well, anyways, there is
No.
another song that was written and performed by a guy back in the 50s, Eddie Cochran, and his song was "Come On Everybody." So listen to the song "Come On Everybody" by Eddie Cochran, and then listen to Susie as a Headbanger, and a lot of similar stuff going on there. But
What was the Eddie Cochran song again?
"Come On Everybody."
Look that up on YouTube.
So, you know, and the other thing that was, you know, that was definitely a positive for the Ramones music, you know. I'm sure you've all heard of the phrase "Gabba Gabba Hey."
Right.
Yeah.
So it was actually their take on they went to go see a movie. And once again, I'm having trouble with the first name, but I believe the guy's last name is Browning. And the movie's on Tubi, and it's called Freaks. And it's a black and white movie. It's very good, but it's very disturbing. Very disturbing. So there's one part of the movie where it looks like the freaks are saying gobble gobble, something like that. So the Ramones decided to turn it into Gabba Gabba Hey, because, you know, one of the things that they wanted to do was not to emulate that movie, but just for the camaraderie of saying, okay, we're all together in this. We're all together, you know. So, so which is another thing people liked. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, maybe didn't feel like they were included, or they felt like they were a freak because they were too tall. You know, Joey Ramone was 6'6", so you know some people that's very tall. You know, so you know they kind of identified with that freak, weirdo, misfit kind of a thing, which people loved, and I kind of think it's pretty cool myself. But like I said, you know, there was the Gabba Gabba Hey, one of us, one of us. No matter what you look like or who you are, you're one of us, and people like that fact that you know that it was all inclusive, not only the music but that chant.
What's getting your goat lately with music and TV shows in the modern era? Is there anything that's really inspires you? Probably not like the old stuff, but anything.
Well, you know what I'd have to say is that I think, like, you know, you look at a lot of shows these days, and it's about how graphic can we be. You know, whether it's violence, whether it's sex, whatever, you know, that's you know, I keep thinking back in the days of like the Great Depression where people went to the movies to get away from their problems. Now, granted, after the movies were over, this depression was still going on. But for a little bit of time, people could get away and see you know, like a musical, or like King Kong, or, you know, just something to take their mind off of what was going on. But you watch shows these days, and instead of taking your mind off of what's going on, it adds to the stress. So, yeah, I think some of the shows like that I grew up with, you know, like in the 70s and even the 80s, and, you know, even some shows in the 90s, you know, they were family friendly. You didn't have to worry about your kids seeing too much violence, you know. It might not entertain kids these days, but it definitely entertained me when I was a kid. You know, shows like Welcome Back, Kotter, and you know, shows of that nature. It's so funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. You know, when I was a kid, I used to remember you'd go down to the record store and you buy 45s. But what I thought was kind of funny is that they would even have 45s of the theme songs of some of the television shows, because you love the shows that much, you wanted to have the theme song.
I have some of those 45s.
Huh?
I have some 45s of TV show theme
Yeah,
songs.
I mean, Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, Yeah. Mike Post was making some good money back in the days. You know, the theme from Rockford Files or the
Yeah,
theme from
that's one of my
SWAT.
favorite ones.
Huh?
That's one of my favorite theme songs.
It's a good.
Yeah.
Barney
and the
Mount
la-
is a good one.
and the land of the lost.
Yeah,
Right.
Quincy Jones made a really good TV theme song. The actual song is called "The Street Beater," but you guys probably know it as "Sanford and Son." But it's a really good 3-minute long like jazz jam.
Right.
It's really really good.
But, you know, kind of like what we're talking about earlier about old TV shows and old music and everything like that. I think deep down, you know, a lot of kids these days, you know, not to say we had the perfect childhood because we didn't, but, you know, I don't think there was so much attention on, you know, drugs and violence and everything like that. You know, you could, not to say that that wasn't around because it was, but you could spend a few minutes, half hour at a time, and watch Welcome Back, Cotter, or watch, you know, like a whole bunch of different shows that, once again, you know, you sit back and laugh for 30 minutes and, but it's kind of hard to do it with the shows these days, you know, so.
Well, yeah, and I think also we mentioned earlier about the theater experience that people did in the, you know, way back when. You know, so in the 20s is when film really began. And then it transitioned to the talkies throughout, you know, just after World War I and then World War II, the same thing. But it wasn't
Right.
just a, you know, a place to escape reality from. It was a day. It was a, you know, a whole day experience. You paid, you know, like 25 cents or whatever it was. You went in and you could go in and it was whatever was playing was already going. And it
Right.
was start off
And,
with a few cartoons, maybe a
exactly.
newsreel.
That brings back a lot. That brings back a lot of good memories. You
Yeah.
know, either driving yourself or your parents driving you, and you walk into the theater and you go, "All right, it's in the middle. I'll watch where it's at." Okay, and then you go back in and watch the parts you missed.
Yeah, you can stay in one. They just repeat the whole thing throughout the day. So again, it starts with a few cartoons and a few newsreels. Then you might get a serial like, you know, Batman or Lone Ranger. And then
Right.
your feature movie, King Kong or, you know, Wizard of Oz, whatever it was.
Well, you know, I actually joke with my kids and my grandkids about this. But you know, we were talking about earlier about AI and all the things they can do with video editing and stuff like that. So it's kind of actually a funny story, but you know, some special effects back in my day was I remember going to see the movie. You ever heard of the movie Earthquake
Oh yeah.
with Charlton Heston?
Yep.
So when the earthquake hit, all they did was turn the volume up as loud as they could and hit the bass.
Well, that's not all. Some things were
That was
actually
the special
censored
effects
around.
back in the day.
It was, well, that movie also went around in censor round as well.
Right, exactly. But I just thought that was kind of funny. People would laugh at that today, but yeah, they didn't have the you know, the high budgets to have, you know, special effects or whatever. You got what you got, which is kind of why I look and say, like, I'm a big Marvel person, and you know, it's kind of good that they were able to do like CGI and stuff like that, because you couldn't have pulled those movies off in the 70s. You couldn't have.
Yeah, some of those
But
characters.
they definitely pulled them off, you know, when they made them. So, you know, it all works out.
What of Marvel? Do you still read comics to this day? Is there any titles you're still holding on to?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's the truth. I stopped reading comics when they became graphic novels. So, and I know some people are like, well, you know, I think I'm being a prude or whatever, but you know, there's something about going down and grabbing that 12, 15-cent comic book off of the rack, and it's on that cheap newsprint, you know. And I don't know. I think these days, I'm not saying anything bad against it. If people enjoy it, that's fine. But you know, back in my day, you wouldn't have had $4. Back in my day, you wouldn't have had $4.50 to get one comic book.
Yeah, it's different. There's so many. Let's say you want to read Spider-Man or X-Men. There's like 20 different titles of Spider-Man.
Right.
How can the hell have a nervous breakdown keeping up with this crap? Like
There's 20 different Spider-Man individuals out there now.
Yeah, like
Right.
it's insane. But lately I've been Dark Horse and Image, and I'm still trying to keep up with Spawn and stuff like that. But I also find weird Vlad the Impaler comics that are crazy, like old ones and stuff like that, like weird stuff. But the EC Comics just came back, which is really cool through Ani Press, and they just released 2 titles called Epitaph from the Abyss and Cruel Universe.
And that's DC?
That's EC Comics. They're back. EC, but it's through
EC. Oh my
EC,
goodness. Okay.
Tales from the
Okay.
Crypt and all that. But they're through Ani Press now, and they just released 2 new titles called Epitaphs from the Abyss and Cruel Universe. And then Elijah Wood has some comics, something coming out called High Strangeness that looks really weird coming out through them. But Cruel, yeah, I'm glad to see EC Comics back. I used to read those Tales from the Crypt. I miss that kind of stuff. I love that stuff.
Right. Well, and like I said, I'm not sure when it's supposed to be released, but supposedly they have been working on it. Now, of course, this isn't Marvel, this is DC, but Zack Snyder is working on another Justice League, which I always was a huge Justice League fan too. I don't know. I guess I'm maybe kind of getting out of my comic book phase because like even like with Marvel, how they've pretty much gotten away with the characters I really loved, and they're introducing new ones. I think my time's up.
You got to be rich to keep up with them these days. That's why it's
Yeah.
so.
Well, I mean, all the new characters. I mean, like, no Captain America anymore, no Iron Man. It's like, yeah, okay.
Image Comics has been doing a Creep Show series that they do like 5 issues, like volume 1, and they're on volume 3 now. Creep Show, that's pretty good. I like that kind of stuff. They're hard to find, the little anthology kind of comics and stuff like that. But go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we got about 5 minutes, and it's been a great show. We got Mark Eddy here. No dolphin jokes tonight, and Jay McNicholas, not yet, and Jay McNicholas and Gary, and we'll get you back. It's been great. I love talking about this stuff and talking to people that have passion for this stuff, and we want to get all your links in. So let's get that out of the way. What are some links for everybody? If you got any places?
Like I said, most of my stuff is on Facebook. So you're going to be looking at. Let's see what I have. I have God, Death, Heaven, and Hell in the Twilight Zone.
Night Zone.
The enduring legacy of the Ramones. All good Cretans go to heaven. Boy. And Night Zone, which is the thing that I'm working on that I haven't been able to get off the ground, and I sure would like to be able to get it off the ground. And I welcome any ideas or any help. But basically, it's that whole thing grew out of my love for Night Zone, Twilight Zone, and stuff like Creep Show. And I'm trying to kind of give it the feel, kind of like I was talking about earlier, about like, a little bit of Twilight Zone, and kind of a little bit of that stuff with those DC horror comics, that kind of thing. But you can check that out. That's the Night Zone on Facebook.
Yeah.
And other than that, like I said, that's probably been about it. I was going to say one more thing. I can't even think of what I was going to say now. So it's probably good that the interview is almost over.
If it pops up, let us know. But I know I got a hold of the old trade back of a few years ago of that Creature Commandos. They're bringing that back on some level from DC, and that was like that. They're redoing. They're doing a cartoon of that. They're also releasing DC Horror Presents Creature Commandos comics that just are coming out soon. But yeah, I got the old paperback of those issues of Creature Commandos. The old ones where Dracula and Frankenstein are like in a secret military paragroup, like bounty hunters or something.
Right. Well, this is probably a whole nother show, but we're talking about Creep Show, the movie. Now, I like Creep Show, the first one, Creep Show, the second one, and believe it or not, they have a Creep Show 3, and it's not good.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I don't know. At least that's my opinion. And if I had to suggest a movie to anybody, are you familiar with Freebie?
Nope.
No, Freebie, yes.
Okay. So Freebie, if you go to Amazon and you put in Freebie, it's kind of like It's an app within Amazon Prime, so you can pull up different movies that they have there too. And I would highly suggest a movie called Portals. So that's a good movie to check out.
What's it called again?
Portals, Portals.
Okay.
And one other quick shout out, just because I decided to take a chance on a movie the other day, and we talk about those shows from the 70s. And I thought, well, this is going to be pretty lame. I'll give it 10 minutes. If it's not any good, I'm turning it off. There's a movie on Hulu called Fantasy Island. And it's basically set up like Fantasy Island from the 70s, but it's a movie. And it's got it's not too gory, but the storyline is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a horror movie, right? And it's it's from the show Fantasy Island, that old show, right?
Right, but
That's
but
weird.
it's kind of like an update. It's a movie of the old show, with new characters playing the parts and everything. It's got a fair amount of gore in it, not too excessive, but the storyline's awesome.
I got a story when I was in first grade. This girl named Amy Parker pulled out a picture of her and I guess the tattoo little dude sitting with her. She was friends with him. I just saw him. If you look on YouTube, they have all those fairy tale theaters on there hosted by Shelley Duvall. He was Rumpelstiltskin. I think his name's Hector or something.
Hector Michelavez.
Yeah. But this girl was friends with him and showing me like pictures hanging out with this little dude in first grade.
What's so cool about the movie, if you have a chance to check it out, is that it's about a group of people that come to the island to live out their fantasies. But what's really weird is their fantasies are intermingled. They're separate, but they're intermingled.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely very weird. It's a pretty good movie. I watched the whole thing.
Well, thanks so much to Gary, to Mark, to Jay, and you're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. Jeffrey Shanks, Conan the Barbarian. He's writing stories for the comics that are out by Titan, and he's an archaeologist down here in Florida. That's Jeffrey Shanks next Friday. And then the next Friday is Dennis Stone, America's Stonehenge. And Mark, anytime you want to sit in on your shows, just let me know. And it's been great. Okay. So we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And keep us in the loop. We'd love to have you back. And thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Thank you.